Hola a todos, aquí Ulises Lavaroní para Cyclical Dreams. Tengo el honor y el placer de estar con Tom Schmidlin. Es un músico de Arkansas y vamos a estar compartiendo con él una entrevista. Así que bueno, le vamos a dar entrada y vamos a conocer un poco sobre su trabajo y su forma de ver la música. Hi Tom, how
Hi,
are you?
good. How are you?
Very well. It's a pleasure for us to have your presence here. It's you are one of the first Cyclical Dreams artists, and we are very proud to have your work with us. It's a great thing.
Thank
Uh,
you.
so, well, we are going to make a little interview for the people to know your vision and your beginnings about music. So, we are going to start with the first question. It's about how you how you start to get interest in music, and how do you reach to electronic music and as well to synthesizers.
Sure. So originally I played in a lot of kind of punk bands and loud, fast rock bands. I started by playing bass when I was about 17. And as I was exploring a lot of that music, I was branching out, trying all sorts of different flavors. And I met a gentleman whose brother was in a band from Chicago called Dianoga, and that band consisted of two electric basses and drums, and they were mostly instrumental. And this was a new thing, an instrumental kind of a rock band, but kind of not really. And then we would kind of follow them around and see their shows, and that brought to my attention a lot of other bands that I learned were kind of called post rock, like Tortoise. And then eventually I met a band from Indiana called Adavin, and the guitar player from that band, a gentleman named Dan, played a record for me by a band called Stars of the Lid. They are on a record label called Cranky Records, and it was just abstract drone, very gentle, and it felt structured yet not structured. And from there, I started to research the whole history of like ambient music, ambient electronic music, all the sort of intersections. So I learned about, of course, Brian Eno and artists like that. And I explored the whole Cranky Records roster, which led me to a lot of different experimental bands and just different kinds of ambient music. Eventually I got to Aphex Twin and all the kind of classic stuff. And then uh, members of Stars of the Lid eventually formed a band that still exists called A Winged Victory for the Sullen. I don't know if you've ever heard them, but they're kind of a little bit more neoclassical. But that the ambient world, what fascinated me about it was that it could be electronic, it could be acoustic, it could be a blend of both, and there was room for all sorts of experimentation and things like that, as long as it was kind of a pleasurable listening experience, I guess. And so I branched out from there, and that's something, the kind of music I always wanted to make kind of secretly, but I was still playing in these punk bands, right? So eventually I moved to Arkansas with my
Living
family
to
for,
both worlds.
yes, I had my secret life at home. And so eventually I moved to Arkansas a couple of years ago, and I was alone. I had no bandmates, no fellow musicians to play with. So I said, now I'm going to make a serious effort to record this kind of music that I've always wanted to make and just didn't have the sort of time or even collaborators to focus on with. And so I started doing that, and that became Pagination, which is what's going to be happening on Cyclical Dreams. That's also led to a collaboration with a friend of mine I've written a lot of comedy and short films with. We have a side project called Home Learning, which is also kind of similar explorations. And so along those lines, starting from bass and guitar and exploring a lot of effects pedals, and especially now there's like a huge explosion of all sorts of different gadgets, that also led me to synthesizers. So a lot of what you would hear on my record is a combination of synthesizers kind of processed to sound like, you know, maybe they're a little bit broken or a little bit too noisy or a little bit lo-fi, blended with more traditional instruments like guitars and bass that have been processed to not quite sound like you would typically think a guitar or bass would sound like, and kind of mashing those things together and exploring. That's a very long answer.
Yes,
Yeah.
I think that you take all many questions about related questions, and but it's great because it's a landscape that you create with your related, sure. And if you can define your influences, I think you already mentioned it, but
Mm-hmm.
but if you want to make a focus to influences that really change your way to.
Yeah. So everything I've mentioned, sure. But there's always new ones, you know, that change your approach. More recently, like hearing contemporary artists, like there's a gentleman who performs is called Amulets, who makes sort of collages of tape loops, and then he plays guitar over them and makes a kind of interesting lo-fi, noisy ambient music. There's do you know Jogging House, the artist Jogging House? It's a lot of modular synthesizers blended with like tape and other things like that. That's been really interesting to me recently. Probably my greatest love that has any kind of relation to the kind of music I'm making is there's a woman named Liz Harris who performs as Grouper. Do you know Grouper? That's that's just the most beautiful music I could imagine is the music
Oh.
that she makes. She's incredible. So um, I think it's all of it has a kind of somewhat of a haziness to it, a kind of a little bit of lo-fi, a little bit of tape hiss in there. Not noise music, but like a little bit noisy, a little bit warm like that. So,
Yes, your
but yeah,
work have a lot of texture, have a lot of breathy and noises, not, but not, yes, not the noise in itself, but
right. Yeah, I love
there.
blending in noise to be part of the sound, but having it still be musical or even kind of melodic. You know, it's we were talking earlier about attention spans, and it's hard to get folks to listen deeply these days. You know, and I want to kind of coax them into that if possible. I know it seems like an impossible task, but yeah.
Yes,
So
it's like painting with sand.
yes, yes,
Yes,
beautiful.
and it was you are a self-taught as well, or you go to study something. But I think for this kind of music is more the way that we take the road, I think.
Mm. Yeah, I took bass lessons early on, you know, just to, you know, like a guitar teacher kind of thing. And but so I learned a little bit of musical theory then, and I do sometimes use a little bit of that. I'll know what key I'm in, and you know, or something like that. But for the most part, I don't have a formal education. I don't really read music. I couldn't sight read. It's a lot of it is just very close listening and careful tweaking and experimentation until I get something that I like, and then layers, loops, all sorts of things like that. Yeah.
Great. And if you have to define your music and more or less a few words, how do
I
you define
usually
it?
I
If you can.
so if I sure I mean, to me it's experimental in the sense that I don't know what's going to come out, and I don't even know always what sound I'm going for until I hear it. So to me that's experimental, but it's not experimental like a formal experiment, like let's plug in these devices and see exactly what will go wrong or right. So it's kind of I would call it like an ambient experimental kind of music with it certainly has electronic elements to it. So it's really tough. You try to post your music online, they want you to put a genre on it and a a classification, and it's, I don't know, do you like it? Like, is it good? But yeah, I don't know. But yeah, that's I tried to describe it to a friend of mine who hadn't heard it yet, someone I hadn't talked to in quite a while. And I said, it's kind of, I'm trying to make abstract paintings, but with sound, essentially. So that's probably even a cliche at this point, but it's about as, the simplest I could describe it. So.
Yes, absolutely. And it sounds really current. I think there's a lot of grace in between ambient and
Hmm.
noisy music, and it's really difficult. It's not our job as well, to the musicians,
Right.
to put the label and to put the name to the things, just
Yeah.
to make the things. But it's great, the description. And well, I think electronic music now is changing day by day, have a lot of contradictions in many things and a
Mm.
lot of innovations. And how is your view about what's happening in electronic music
Oh,
nowadays?
I find it the most exciting thing in the world right now. It's incredible how many different directions things are going in. The biggest challenge is me trying to keep track of it all and trying to find things that, because there's so much that it's when you find something that's truly like a gem, something that really you can connect with, which is how I found it. Cyclical Dreams, like, I liked everything they had posted so far, so it's like, oh, this is fantastic. I'm going to send them some stuff just in case they happen to be, open to it. And so a Bandcamp is the biggest thing for me right now as far as finding new music of all kinds, but especially electronic music and ambient music. And I think that it's great that there's so much. But also it's a challenge because there is so much, right? It's hard to sometimes find the diamonds in the rough, although there's a lot of diamonds out there too. So, and I like, especially the context that we're in right now, the quarantine. All is in the United States. There's all sorts of terrible, um, you know, political strife and racial strife and things like that. And to find a little bit of an escape from that can also be a kind of response to that, and kind of potentially help like comfort other people and give them a little break from the chaos, and to sort of sit back and relax a little bit with a little musical journey. I don't know, but like, something like that. Electronic music's very good at that, I think. Be it ambient or just pure synthesizers, whatever. It's a good way to escape in some ways, while still engaging with a valuable emotional experience and a relevant piece of art.
Absolutely. Well, I think you go strictly right through all the concepts of the questions,
Mhm.
and yeah, you just go, and it was great. Well, we are very pleased to have you on the label, and we want to say thank you. And it's great to the new release, and we hope to have a lot of music and continue all these efforts to, yes, to bring another kind of feelings to everywhere, to the homes, to all the places that, of course, we need music, we need a lot of art, and this is great.
Yes. Yeah, I want to
So
thank you and everyone else too. I mean, this has been an amazing experience. I'm so excited about it. I cannot wait until the album comes out. So I'm very excited about that. But I'm also just so happy to be a part of all this. Like that, I like everything, like I said, that the label's been putting out. I've been checking out a lot of side projects people have. Been checking out your stuff. Like it's really exciting. Like, I'm just out here in northern Arkansas. There's kind of like no one around me immediately that's doing this, but there's people all over the world that are, and I'm starting to connect with them, and that's really great.
yes, and
So
we are together, and that's
yeah,
great.
exactly.
Yes.
Yes.